Call the regular council meeting, the City of Twinsburg City Council, the September 10th meeting to order. Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Steele?
Here.
Ms. McPherron? Mr. Bellin?
Here.
Mr. Fury?
Here.
Mr. Scafidi?
Here.
Mr. Barr?
Here.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Here.
Next, please join Mrs. Stoffer in the invocation of the Pledge of Allegiance.
Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us to engage in meaningful discussion, allow us to grow closer as a group, and nurture the bonds of the community. Fill us with your grace as we make decisions that affect all of our residents and businesses and our dedicated city employees. Bless those away from us, serving to protect our country. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next is the minutes from our last meeting. Anybody have any questions, additions, deletions? Everybody get a chance? Okay, I'd like to make a motion. We approve the minutes from the August 27th council meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Bellin seconds. Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Okay, next on the agenda is audience participation.
First, we have Lauren Senstock.
Okay, Lauren Singstock, 2704 Arbor Glen Drive. The other senior facility over here, I've been living there for about 6.5 years. And I just came this evening because I've been following with some interest an issue dealing with the zoning and the developments being discussed. Planning Commission, Board of Zoning Appeals, and also by council here for a senior cluster development they're talking about over off of State Route 91. And one of the things that came up a little bit earlier was how our charter and zoning works here in Twinsburg. And I'd just like to remind the public, as well as our council members, some of them should know very well, that Twinsburg is a unique community. And we're unique partly because our city charter does provide under Section 7A01 for all zoning regulations, uses, and districts. And I think it's worth reading, so I'll just read what it says here. It says that should a change to a zoning district boundary or a change in the uses permitted or prohibited in and zoning district, or changes to limitations and requirements related to height, density, percentage of lot occupancy, building setback lines, area dimensions of yards, and open space requirements within a zoning district within the city of Twinsburg, such change shall first be submitted to the Planning Commission, then to City Council, and ultimately requires public hearings, lots of procedures, but basically requires a vote of the public. And we look at what I saw in the site plan, and having been a zoning inspector years ago and interested in this and worked in a lot of communities, I'd urge council to seriously look at what's required in an R7 senior resident district. Like Arbor Glen Apartments over here next door. I've lived there long enough to know that it's designed with specific requirements for people that are seniors with or without disabilities. We have a facility, ancillary facility that we use for, can be used for swimming, for exercise rooms, things that make it convenient for people that are seniors to have community involvement, places to do crafts, play cards, etc. And what I want to emphasize here is when I look at the site plan that's being promoted here, it seems like, quote, like a lot of city officials, and I've read the minutes from the Planning Commission and Board of Zoning Appeals. I've spent considerable time studying this. And what I don't see in there is some common sense approach to what's really being discussed and how it's going to impact the development in the area. And I'm not opposed to single-family cluster homes, I'm not opposed to developers. What I believe that I want to remind council, mayor and law director should certainly know, that in the city of Twinsburg, when you're going to make changes to our zoning code that impacts these areas that you're discussing here with setback variances, may have been approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals. I don't think they're entitled to giving conditional uses. That's something that required of the Planning Commission. And ultimately, the use of these properties require not just setbacks, but density requirements. It says that I see in there very clearly 5 units per acre. That's 55, and by my calculator, not 71. And I'm not sure who city officials are promoting it and try to fast track it, but I'd encourage everybody here to really understand the procedures, make sure you get a written legal opinion from your law director, and don't consider these to be just some apartments. Senior people, when they're in their 80s, aren't really interested in going out and walking 300-400 yards through the snow to get their mail. We can conveniently go in Arbor Glen to a mail room and pick it up. There's areas for us within our units where we can play cards, do
1 minute.
puzzles, etc. So I urge council to not be in a hurry. Don't be fast tracking. It's just like things talking about the pickle courts, which doesn't have to do with zoning, but you know, a lot of good comments are going to be made, and when you take your time and do things right, they'll benefit everybody and not just make one group happy and another group unhappy. So when it comes to zoning, realize why we're unique and read the code, read the laws, because that's really what we're doing here. All the authority that you folks have was given through the charter. The zoning is set up through the charter, through you folks, and there's a procedure for doing all this. And I'd urge you to really think and take your time. Don't try to fast track stuff like this all the time, because the old saying my dad used to say, haste makes waste. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Next, we have Bob Hughes.
Bob Thews, 2229 Demi Drive in Twinsburg in the Meadowood community. Last meeting's discussion concerning zoning issues in the caucus and the regular council meeting was one of the lowest points in this council since I've been attending the meetings in the last 6 years. You, council and mayor, are representatives of the city of Twinsburg. Twinsburg, as part of the United States and the state of Ohio, government should be a bastion of the rule of law. As a city, we should be living by those laws. What I saw, and appeared to everyone who heard the caucus meeting and saw the council meeting, is that the city and the mayor gave the appearance of a bunch of crooks. Simply put, in the caucus meeting, a resident was denied 1 variance for a barn that was 300 square foot larger than code. But a developer is entitled to 17 variances. This is called the good old boy network, not government. First, it is 30 years since I did zoning and planning for a town in Pennsylvania, but I can tell you that this whole group failed to see the problem. The city is using an incorrect zoning code. The city has failed us. You know, zoning has been around for over 100 years. The style of senior living that was talked about has been around for at least 25 years. This is nothing new. I'm sure that this has been dealt with on a state level. Now, as I recall, and as confirmed earlier, we send people to Columbus every year for training about zoning and planning. Nobody recognized that we had a serious fault in our zoning code. Maybe we should leave the bar and actually attend some training sessions. But wait a minute, we do have someone, Mr. Larry Finch, who got recognized by council when I could not speak and told you it was in the air. He knows it, but council and the mayor don't know. Nobody comments. No plan of action to fix it. No one's held accountable for not having it fixed. Here's the message that meeting delivered to the public. If I tick off the mayor, which I have been known to do, okay, and I want 1 variance on my property, I have a snowball's chance of getting it. But if Joe Schmo who might have contributed to his campaign or all of your campaigns or be a friend of yours, he can get 17 expedited variances out of council. Is that the picture you want to project? Because it's exactly what was seen. You might have gotten away with it if you recognized the failing of the zoning code and established a date to have it fixed. Instead, you talk about how good the developer is working with you. As they say, if it looks like crap and smells like crap, most likely it's crap. Okay? Well, if you look like crooks and you sound like crooks, I don't need to go any farther. Thank you.
Okay. Next.
Next, Mr. Sorley, did you want to speak again? No? No? Not you. Sue Clark?
Good evening, Council. Sue Clark, 9845 Crestwood Drive. And I'm here to talk about spending. I know the mayor does not need council's permission to spend $15,000 for a restaurant consultant or $13,000 for the pickleball courts. But earlier this year, we had a 20-minute deliberation on doing a performance audit for certain departments in the city. The difference between doing the whole city and those certain departments was $30,000 to do all of them. I would like to ask council, why do you take 20 minutes on a need, but only a few seconds on what the mayor wants to spend? Do we think this was wise of the city's money? When we are going to lease a fire truck, we need repairs to the fire station. We took $8,000 back from the fire department for travel on the fire truck. I don't understand that. To me, that is not financial responsibility with the shape that this city's in. So once again, I'll say it. Is it wants over needs? We really need pickleball courts and consultants. Thank you.
Next, Amanda Bellin?
Good evening. Amanda Bellin, 10189 Scenic View Drive. As most of you know, I started a petition last week to keep the tennis courts at Glen Meadow Park. 148 people have signed it, and I am here on behalf of them to urge you, Mayor Yates and City Council members, to keep the tennis courts. Many evenings, all the tennis courts are in use, and one evening in particular, my son and I were trying to play tennis, and we had to go home disappointed because there were no courts for us to play on. Right now, both pickleball and tennis players can use those courts. Why spend extra money to reduce the number of people that can use those courts? You can play pickleball on a tennis court, but you can't play tennis on a pickleball court. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And Mr. is it McElroy?
Yes, he should be here in a minute.
Is there anybody else in the list?
There's, just to confirm, when Karen Heil was up there, she had said some of these pickleball people had left, so she crossed their names out. So, Mr. Presley, Jill Manger, anyone still here? Okay, just wanted to confirm. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. So no, there is no one else then.
Okay. All right, we'll move on.
I'd like to respond.
Go right.
Mr. Maestros,
Yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
Are there any zoning issues or charter issues that you feel were violated in our last meeting?
No, the issue before council in the last meeting was the BZA approval of the variances. This matter is scheduled to go in front of the planning commission next Monday.
Mhm.
So planning commission hasn't had any final review of this. The matter was before the BZA, I believe, on 2 separate occasions, whereas the second time they made a recommendation granting the variances. was approved. Those variances were setback variances. I understand there were 16 or 17 of them, but they were, again, setback variances from the side and rear yards and from the railroad tracks.
Hey, Mark, would you put the original plan or the three-story plan on the wall for me? Okay. So what the R7 zoning allowed was a three-story building, which was the occupancy 140, rough?
Approximately.
140, yes. Where the community that lives next to that, Belmar, was very concerned that now they'd be looking out the back window of their views that are trees now into a three-story building. I've got numerous calls from residents there to try to do something about this. Mark, can you go to the proposed plan? Okay. Can you go back to the slide that had that? Okay. There, thank you. So, and this is 70?
71.
71.
Right.
So what's proposed now as a compromise is for the developer who owns the property and really doesn't need our permission to put a three-story building there because it's a permitted use and the zoning's there. If he sticks a three-story building in the middle of the lot, he can do that. But he's working with the city to try to make it more acceptable to the residents that are going to fully surround it. They agreed not to connect to their roads. They're cutting their occupancy in half. And the variances that we're talking about are the side variance that's at the back, which would be the far left of the screen, and the variance that would be on the top of the screen where there's a railroad track. Now, we're talking about 17 variances, but that's because each of those individual boxes needs a variance either for the back setback or the side setback. And there's property lines that some of them need 2 variances for the same wall. So in my opinion, this is much more acceptable to the area as a whole. It's much more cohesive with the properties that are going to surround it on 2 ends of it. The residents of Belmar who have been there for 5 to 7 years, you know, although they would like to keep it a field, are much happier with a first-story wooded area that they're not going to see. And the Board of Zoning Appeals, our Board of Zoning Appeals is pretty strict. We've got a guy named Ed Kanzler who's a planning lawyer, and I mean, if there's you just don't get variances with us. So, Mr. Thews, you know, I thoroughly disagree with your thing. The gentleman that was looking for the 14-foot garage was actually trying to use it for a commercial business as well, which also violates the zoning of that area. This looks like a win-win to me. I do not know the developer. I did not take money from the developer, and nor am I aware that anybody else took money from the developer.
Also, I'd like to add to that, the issue about the one variance that was denied for the garage area, which the gentleman, the resident came in and was looking to build a barn. I think the biggest issue with that was that it was going right over an easement area where the city has a sewer underneath there. Had he put that on the easement area, should we need to go in there and make any repairs to that sewer, that building would have to come down, okay, or be moved, one or the other. I spent about an hour with that resident, and also the height. He was looking for a 16-foot when we have a 12-foot maximum, okay, which would have been higher than his house. He's in the smack dab in the middle of a residential area with all ranch-style homes. And that would have really stuck out like a sore thumb there as well. In speaking with him, I tried to make some compromise and asked if he would consider lowering that building to 12-foot height and move it off of the easement area where the sewer is, because it just can't go there. Granted, there are some folks in that area that have put things on that easement, fences, swimming pools, whatever, without a permit. if they'd come for a permit, they would have been denied as well, okay, to go on that easement. So, I mean, that's the reason we denied the one. Or we didn't deny it, but the Board of Zoning Appeals denied that request. And he came to council just to talk with us about it. And I had no problem going there and discussing that whole situation with him. And he understood. And truthfully, I think at the end of the day, his goal is to move to Arizona. He's looking for some big ranch-type property anyway. So, not that that matters. I would love to make him satisfied while he's here, if we can. And I tried to negotiate a compromise, but it was fruitless at that point. So that's all I wanted. I just wanted to add to Mr. Fury's comments with regards to that.
The other comment is about that somehow the city's fast-tracking this. I heard that term at least a half a dozen times in that comment from the resident. The only action that was taken at that meeting was to waive a 30-day waiving period on a Board of Zoning appeal, which, if you look in the minutes, in the 15 years or 16 years I've been here, I don't think we've denied a 30-day waiver ever. They go through all the time.
Every one of them.
It's my understanding that they'll be in the planning commission next week, so really the waiver, regardless, didn't matter. There was a question whether the meeting was this Monday or the following Monday. But nothing special was done. No unique set of circumstances or favors were given to anybody on that. If you get a variance from our Board of Zoning Appeal and you ask for a 30-day waive, we vote on those unanimously every week. So that's all I have. If you have any other comments, Mr. Maestros.
No, I just say that the zoning wasn't changed on that property. There wasn't a request for a zoning change on that, and it wasn't changed. If there was, the zoning change would have to go on the ballot. Variances are there, okay, and the Board of Zoning Appeals is in existence for exactly a situation where a building department says, no, you can't do it, it's too close, and you can appeal to the BZA, which is exactly what happened here. BZA had a hearing and made its determination. Like I said, the variance, that's why it's there. Changing a setback line is not a change to all R7. It is a variance request made on this particular piece of property and granted by BZA and this particular piece of property. That is not in violation of the charter. If that's the case, then there's absolutely zero reason to have a BZA in existence. So that's what happened here. In the 30-day waiting period, exactly, Mr. Fury, as you stated, was we weren't sure when the planning commission was going to meet next, and that's the next step for this proposal. This was not approval of a site plan from the standpoint of what's in those buildings and everything else. This is simply the BZA action and to move it on to planning, which was 32 days after council approved that. So the 30-day waiting period did not matter.
Thank you.
Dave, have we not overturned the BZA on variances? Or have we not had appeals from another over variances? Speaking in specifics, being the Residence Inn that was supposed to go in at Damon's?
No, we council has overturned the BZA
Okay.
before in the past, and I think that's what Mr. Fury brought up at the last meeting, that if you wanted to go forward and make a
That's true.
motion to do that, that was the opportunity to do that. That's why it was in front of council.
But
No,
we,
I mean, council has overturned the BZA, and it
takes 5 out of the 7 of us to overturn
Sure.
the BZA. Okay.
Could I be recognized for just a minute?
Sure, go ahead.
And the public to know, I sat cautious quietly over here and listened to the 25, 30 minutes discussion about pickleball in a caucus meeting. So I'd just like to mention to some people that read the R7 regulations, wherein I do not see on your site plan up here any ancillary facility, which it clearly says in R7 zoning, shall be there. And of course, I think everybody knows shall is mandatory. And the units like this, according to the R7 code that I read in there, and I'm pretty good at reading that stuff, it says those units are supposed to be 3-unit clusters. It doesn't say they're supposed to be 4, 5, or 6. Those are all things that you need to read into that code. And if Mr. Maestros is confident of this, which apparently he is, should have no trouble with giving us a legal written opinion of how council is authorized to take action on that, how it complies, and what procedures should specifically be followed so that you folks do all this legally. That's all I say. And if he's confident in that, should be no problem in creating that document for you. So you guys are gonna do what you wanna do. I'm just letting you know. I think you should check it out further. Thank you.
Mr.
Okay.
Steele, I believe Mr. McElroy has arrived, so he was on the sheet to sign up. So.
Come on up.
Yes, please.
Need your name and your address, sir.
Name and address. Sorry I was late. I was actually playing some tennis, and so sorry for my attire, a little bit sweaty. My name is William McElroy. Address is 2949 Tucker Court here in Twinsburg. I read in the bulletin about the pickleball situation. Ted and I are friends, and I texted him a little bit about the situation and my potential displeasure about turning a couple of our courts into pickleball exclusively. We have 5 well-surfaced, and they were just resurfaced tennis courts up by the high school. And then we've got the 2 at Glenwood that honestly need help, and 2 behind the up behind the senior center that also need help. Both those last 2 sets of 2 aren't typically taken care of. So I think most of our residents who want to go play tennis will do so on those 5 courts by the community pool. I believe, and I've thought this, I've been a Twinsburg Township resident for 5 years and a city resident for about 15. I actually played tennis in college. I play competitively still. I've got 6 children. My oldest played on Twinsburg's team. My daughter's playing on this team right now, and probably 3 or 4 of my younger ones will potentially play here in Twinsburg. So I know the landscape of tennis in Northeast Ohio, and I would tell you to look at Solon, look at Hudson, potentially even look at Aurora. Specifically Solon and Hudson, tennis in those communities is at a much higher level than here in Twinsburg, and a lot to do with the number of courts and the availability to play. So Solon's got 12 brand new courts, plus they have communities that have tennis courts throughout them. Hudson has 5 beautiful new courts, but you could probably find a half a dozen different communities that have 1 or 2 tennis courts that the kids are playing in from young ages. And Twinsburg's not like that. Twinsburg does not have any community courts in developments. So I've always thought we needed more tennis courts. And so what I found is those communities that have more tennis courts, the level of tennis is much better. I can tell you personally, 3 or 4 years ago, we thought about moving to Aurora or Hudson or Solon for that purpose, to go to a development that had tennis courts so our kids could just go and play for ease. Ultimately, we didn't move. Our 2 oldest kids kind of gave us a little kickback, and so we decided to stay. And I know a lot of you we just put on an addition on our house, so I've been at some of these meetings before. But we're here in Twinsburg for probably the rest of our lives. And I think taking a community that I think has less tennis courts than needed and taking 2 of them away to dedicate them for pickleball is a mistake. I can say those 12 courts in Solon, they resurfaced them, and 2 of them, they lined for pickleball. I play at Western Reserve over in Streetsboro. They've got 10 indoor courts. They've lined 2 or 3 of them for pickleball. But as far as I know, and I could be wrong, I don't know a single community in our area that has dedicated pickleball courts. You can have, if there's funds that are going to be allocated, why not just have some nets that are put off to the side and have those courts lined? And then they can be used for both pickleball and tennis, but to remove the ability to play tennis, again, I think is a mistake. Thanks for letting me talk.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
That is all.
We're done. Okay, next we're on to council communication and committee reports. Mr. Belling.
Good evening. I attended yesterday's department head retreat where we reviewed planning, building, and engineering departments. These meetings have been a great opportunity for council for us to ask questions, really understand the inner workings of these departments. So I'd like to thank both Amy Moore and Larry Finch for taking the time to educate us. Also attended this evening's Capital Improvements Board meeting. I'll let one of my colleagues report on that. The Architectural Review Board met on Thursday, September 5th. There were 9 cases on the agenda that evening. Case 1909-81 was a wall sign for Allstate Insurance at 11660 Ravenna Road, Suite C, which was approved. Case 1909-82 and 1909-83 were single-family homes in Whispering Woods at 1828 and 1867 Maryville Drive, which were both approved. Case 1909-84 was a monument sign at Meadowwood Boulevard, which was approved. Case 1909-85 was an addition at 10334 Bell Meadow Drive. That case was not heard. The resident was not present. Case 1909-86 and 1909-87 were both new single-family homes in Quarry Reserve, Boulderbrook at 3063 Wyatt's Way and 3045 Wyatt's Way that were both approved. Cases 1908-66 and 1908-68 were signs for Circle K at 2496 East Aurora Road. If you recall, those signs were originally approved for Circle K with the red Circle K branding. The company has changed their mind, and now they're going to be branded with the BP logo and colors. Those were both approved. The next Architectural Review Board meeting will be held Thursday, September 19th, 6 p.m. here in Council Chambers. And the next Golf Advisory Board meeting will be held on Tuesday, September 17th, 6:30 p.m., also here in Council Chambers. That concludes my report for this evening. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Bard.
Thank you, sir. Good evening. The Planning Commission has not met since our last meeting here, but I'm sure there will be several people who want to attend the next Planning Commission meeting as we discuss some of the issues that people have spoken about tonight. And that meeting will be this coming Monday, the 16th. It'll be at 7 p.m. here in Council Chambers, so please feel free to attend that meeting as well. We'd like to see you there. The Environmental Commission did meet. We only have a couple of meetings left, so we get into our fall cycle here. And we have gotten quite a few things accomplished, including establishing a subcommittee for Earth Day. That's something that everybody in the Environmental Commission is really proud of. We like to continue that event here in Twinsburg. And so we've got some people that are going to start crunching the numbers and working out the details on that. Additionally, the 9th Annual Environmental Commission of Community Cleanup is Saturday, October 12th. That's from 9 a.m. to noon at the Twinsburg Community Center. So anybody that wants to volunteer, we'd love to see you up there. Steve Basso, who's our Assistant Fire Chief here, also a member of the Widow's Sons Motorcycle Association, and Matt Betzker, who's a Fraternal Order of Odd Fellows. Those folks donate and volunteer their time, and they'll be grilling hot dogs and hamburgers and everything for all the participants afterwards. Starbucks is also going to provide coffee, so I know it's early morning on a Saturday, but we'd love to see you out there. I promise we'll have Starbucks here for you. Twinsburg Environmental Commission and the city will be sponsoring the annual shredding event. That's coming up Saturday, October 19th. That's at Public Works. That starts at 9 a.m. and goes until noon or until the truck is full. So please, if you have anything valuable that needs to be shredded, bring it on up and we'll get it taken care of for you. We'd like to limit it to like 10 file boxes or the paper shopping bags, just so everybody has an opportunity. And my suggestion, having been there the past several years, would be to get there early because there is a line. That's probably our most popular event that the Environmental Commission hosts. Finally, the next Environmental Commission meeting will be Tuesday, October 1st, and that will be our last formal meeting for this calendar year, although the subcommittee will be meeting to discuss with that. But Tuesday, October 1st at 7 p.m. here in Council Chambers. So, that concludes my report for this evening. Thank you, Mr. Steele.
Mrs. Stauffer.
Okay, I attended the capital improvement meeting tonight. My other committees have not met. Community Relations will meet on September 19th at 5 o'clock in the library. And that's all I have to report.
Mr. Scafidi.
Thank you. Good evening. The Capital Improvements Board held their first meeting tonight. They'll be in session now until they go through the entire capital improvements requests. I swore in the 4 new members. Then they, of course, chose their own chairperson. And then the next thing on the agenda was to go through the 2020 capital requests from all the departments. So the finance director went through each and every one of those requests with the capital improvements board. They had an opportunity to ask any questions they might have now. They've got a couple days to mill that over and maybe come up with any other questions that they have. This Thursday at 6 o'clock will be the next capital improvements meeting, where there'll be some of the department heads there to answer any questions that they have, and they'll hear it right from the department head who made that request. And that was the end of that meeting. What else? The Board of Zoning Appeals has not met, and they don't have any meetings scheduled. There are no appeals coming before the board, so there's nothing scheduled there. That's it. You know, under my report, I just would like to address real quick. I know we've talked a lot about pickleball and tennis. I did receive a call from a resident, and I wanted to share this with the mayor. She has Parkinson's disease, and she goes up to Glen Meadow and plays tennis, and that helps her. That's her therapy for playing for her disease, and she likes to play there. She's very disappointed that we're going to be changing those over to pickleball courts. Her appeal was to see if there was something that we can do. She's tried to play at other areas. She's gone over to Ashdale, and from what I understand, those courts are in really bad shape. Truthfully, I wasn't aware if we own those courts, if it was part of the homeowners association. Since that time, I found out that the city does own those courts. I was not aware. I had never been there either. And they've tried to play at some of the other courts, and you know, she was just telling me, and I told her I would pass it along to the mayor and to the group here, that you know, during the seasons when there's Twins Days or there's concerts, you know, the courts up there are impossible to play at up behind the senior center or anywhere over there. And when the schools have them reserved, they can't play there either. So they feel like they're limited to their play. So what I did want to do again was just pass this along to you, Mayor, and to the rest of council. At least share her concerns with all of you. And you know, in doing that and listening to this tonight, and truthfully, when the pickleball concern came up, I had no idea that tennis was so popular in Twinsburg. The Glen Meadow is right in my ward. I pass those courts all the time. I have not witnessed seeing them as full as I'm hearing, or as many players there as I hear. And like Mrs. Bellin said, maybe, you know, when I go by in the morning, you're not going to see a crowd there. So I don't know when the people play. But in thinking about that, it's, you know, it makes sense to me, and that we begin to look at, if we're going to go, if we do go forward and change these courts over to pickleball courts, that I know in the past we've talked about the animals there at Glen Meadow and moving those into the back somewhere and relocating those. I think, Mayor, that maybe it's time that hearing all the people that are into tennis and into pickleball, I mean, we need to have enough for everybody. I would like us to start a discussion on maybe building new tennis court over there at Glen Meadow. If we go ahead with this project, because the folks that play pickleball have no dedicated court. We do have other tennis courts in the city. And I would also like us to look at, or at least get some pricing on the court over there on Ashdale. See what it's going to take to upgrade that court so it is a playable court and it's usable. I understand there's no parking there, and maybe we can look at doing some type of parking situation. You got to walk through the grass or through dirt, I guess, to get to this court. And unfortunately, since I spoke with the resident, I hadn't had a chance to get over there yet. But I am going to go see it. But I would like to propose that as well, that we take a look at that and see if there's somewhere along the line we can repair that court. If it's a court that's sitting there and nobody's using it, well, then it's no good to anybody. So I would like us to do that, but also I'm asking council and the mayor, let's consider putting in another court, a tennis court. You know, and when I look at the vision of that, I see pickleball here and tennis behind it. That would be a really great recreation facility right there with the new swing sets that are back there and play sets, and you got the ball fields over there. That could be a really nice facility there. Parking, I understand, but I think that parking's the least of our worries. We'll figure out what we're going to do with that, but that's a good problem to have because that means that we've done the right thing and we've got people there and people are playing there. So I'm throwing that out on the table. I'm going to vote for this tonight. I'm going to support appropriating the money for the pickleball courts because, again, those folks have nowhere dedicated to play. Tennis does, and unfortunately, it's being used by other, and we've got to take our turns somehow, some way. The other thing I heard is that pickleball has been able to reserve the courts at Glen Meadow. That was another problem that this resident had. And her and her husband were up there playing tennis, and they were kicked off by pickleball people or told to leave because this was their time, they had it reserved. Whether that's true or not, I don't know if they can reserve that, but, you know, I guess it'll be a moot point if we change it, because I was going to suggest that we let the tennis folks reserve it as well. It just didn't seem fair that one group can reserve it and one group could not. So if this passes tonight and it changes, well then, again, it's a moot point. So that's all. I wanted to throw that out. And other than that, that's all in my report. Thank you.
Sam, I did go up to the Birchwood Park earlier today to check out that tennis court. It didn't appear to be in as bad a shape as I thought it would be.
Okay.
We do have some cracks in it where there's grass growing up through it and stuff. The major drawback to that park is that's a neighborhood park. There's no parking. And to get to the tennis court, there is a path that runs between two houses.
That's what I was told.
Okay. And the tennis court is, from once you hit the end of the path, is probably from here to the end of the building out that way that you have to walk up to get there, okay? It has everything. It's got the chain link fence around it. There's a pavilion up there, a nice picnic pavilion, but the problem is you either park on the street or we have to figure out some way to, because there's houses probably within 30 feet of both sides of that,
Okay.
that pathway. And there's 3 to the right, I believe, as you go in, and there's another 2 to the left that would be directly affected by, you know, the cars that were going in there. I think the thing is far enough away from the houses where the noise from it would not be a big
problem
to do.
What do people
But-
do now? It's,
Park on the street.
they just park on the street, okay.
Brian, how many
I don't
courts are
think-
there, Brian?
How many courts?
How many courts?
One.
One.
So
I don't-
it
to
would
be honest,
no
I
more
don't-
than, what, 2 cars, 3 cars, maybe.
Right.
Yeah, I
On
don't
one
know
court.
that anybody goes down there to play anymore. First off,
I don't think a
I
lot
don't
of
think
people
half
know
of our
it's
city
there.
knows that court's even there.
Exactly.
Okay, in fact, I'd say 3/4 of our city doesn't know it's there. Because
Correct.
it was, as we have tried to do in all of our residential developments, tried to have neighborhood parks, okay? And that's what that is. When you were talking about having developments with tennis courts in it, that's probably the only one in town, okay? But it's so isolated, nobody knows, okay? So we could spend some money on that and fix it up, but we'd have more to do, and I'm sure the PD would be having to deal with a lot of parking complaints, and, you know, we don't allow us on-street parking, so what do we do?
That's why I asked the mayor if we could just, start to study it, and let's see what we can do.
Sure.
If there's anything we can do to upgrade that court and make it usable.
Again, I think we should look at that one. I think we should look at the ones up behind Chamberlain. Again, I mean, I talked to several residents. Bill and I have communicated, Paul that was here earlier, I talked to him before he left, and I've always supported tennis in town. I mean, I'm an active guy. I support basically any kind of recreational activity that we can, and it's sometimes very challenging to try to please every single group. I mean, that's an elected official dilemma, is trying to make decisions that please everyone. So again, just because this might happen tonight doesn't mean we're going to shut down the future expansion of tennis in Twinsburg. I think there's an interest to pursue that, and we can always continue to have that discussion.
Okay. Mr. Fury, you are next.
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 Thank you. I attended the mayor's retreat where we talked about economic development and planning. I attended the capital improvement meeting earlier this evening. Our next Finance Committee meeting will be September 27th at 6 p.m. For those who are taking advantage of the Twinsburg Gas Aggregation Program, this is our 14th year, and our consultant has told us that over that period of time, residents have saved in excess of $10 million on their gas costs, fuel costs with natural gas in the city of Twinsburg. As the mayor mentioned last meeting, that if you're in the program, we have struck a price $2.82 per MCF. That's extremely low. It's been as high as 10 to 12 in the last 10 years. It was hovering in the 5 to 6s, but 282 is the most aggressive price that you can see on the Public Utilities website, PUC, apples to apples natural gas. Best deal that you can get. This is a 3-year fixed price because natural gas prices are at an all-time low. If you are in the program, you don't have to do anything. You'll continue to get this price. They are mailing letters to those people who aren't in the program now. If you are with another gas distributor at a higher rate and wish to transfer into this program, you should do a few things. One is get your bill out and see where you're getting your natural gas now to compare your current rate versus what the 282 is. Most likely it's going to be higher. The second thing you need to do is check and find out when your current contract, because if you're with somebody else, you're in a contract. Whether it's with NOPEC who will let you in, or whether it's with this is with Santana, but there are 15 options for you to get natural gas pipeline through Dominion. If you are in a contract, there's going to be a cancellation fee most likely, and you need to know when that contract ends so that you don't get assessed a $50 to $100 to $150 fee to shorten your contract to get this deal, because you'll lose money in the long run. Whenever your contract ends, you can opt into this program. You don't have to opt into it now. You can opt into it in a year. You can opt into it in 2 years. It's available. And the information on how to opt in, if you haven't received a letter, is on our website. There's an 800 number, which is 800-699-4014. You just call them, you tell them you're a City of Twinsburg resident and you want to transfer in. But you should absolutely check where you're getting your gas now and what your contract dates are. Because if you arbitrarily change this and you're in a contract, you will get hit with a cancellation fee, and it could be significant and wipe out any savings you had. So, great price. Mark Burns, our consultant, does an outstanding job with us in getting this. This is the best one that's out there for any municipality at this point. I think most of the city knows by now that Mayor Karabeck passed away on Sunday, and I know that Mayor Yates had talked about him before, but Jim Karabeck appointed me to my first board in 1995. I was the Cable 9 associate, so I'd go and sit with representatives for the other 7 communities. When I built a house, when I moved into my second house and built it in Twinsburg, had a lot of issues with the developer at the time, and Jim Karabeck was really hands-on. He helped us clean out a lake of 2 5-ton service trucks full of garbage, which were car engines and I think there were 30 tires. It was just horrible. It was like a dump back there, and the city cleaned it up, because they owned part of the lake. In addition, we were the dump for the soil, similar to the pile that we have over by the golf course. And I can remember to this day Jim Karabeck driving a bulldozer, moving the dirt in the back of in the common area behind our house. So Jim wasn't. He was just a no nonsense, get it done kind of guy, and he will be missed. But I have fond memories of him. As I was walking through, we have the conference room dedicated to him. So I was thinking about him on the way in today, and that's all I have tonight. Thank you very much.
Okay. I was here for the capital improvements meeting tonight. None of my other boards or committees have met. I'd like to say something about Mr. Karabeck. as when I was a police officer, I was one of the union negotiators, and I had to sit across the table from Jim, and I never saw him raise his voice. I never saw him get mad at me, and we were friends when we were done talking about the union contract. He was also, as Bill said, the type of guy who would take care of things on his own. I wasn't there for it, but I hear that there was a tree that was on number 6, a par 3 up at the golf course that was getting in the way. And it got in the way for a while, and then it found the ground. I think he may have had something to do with that, thank goodness. He also, down at the Red Barn, I believe he was down there on the bulldozer working on that parking lot when they were paving the parking lot. And then I live up on Gettysburg, and we have a creek behind our house that needed to be straightened out, and I remember seeing him on the bulldozer on the weekend straightening out the creek. He was a really good guy. He was a good mayor of our city. We're going to miss him. I will miss him because every time I get to talk to him, which hasn't been a lot because they were in Florida, but he was a nice guy. Okay. Mayor.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everyone. A couple things, just the council retreat that we had. I just want to thank council for attending. We tried this a little bit new this year. I get to spend times with our department heads on a daily basis working through issues, you know, and I have access to them all the time, and I wanted to make them available to council this year at a more intimate level. You know, we get reports and everything, and they always are able to come see department heads, but this was a set-aside time that they can ask questions, learn about kind of the future of the department, where their staffing are, and a lot of different issues that are kind of brought forward. So I want to thank them for attending that. Working through budgets, so I want to thank our department heads because we've been really kind of grinding out some of the budgets in a preliminary fashion right now, working through a lot of our capital issues. We did have capital improvement board. I mean, we've trimmed quite a bit prior to it even coming to the capital improvement board, looking at the budget for next year. And then just finally, just talking about Mayor Carbeck. He was an interesting character. I've got to know him a little bit before coming on city council, while I was on city council, and then as mayor, whenever he's in town, he always wants to come in and sit and chat and give me advice. And he's really good at doing that. He's a no-nonsense kind of guy. We were laughing about, he used to sit up here during council meetings with his feet up reading the paper, and if he heard something that pissed him off, he would jump in. So I can't imagine myself doing that. You'd imagine what the social media would look like. So, but he was a great guy, and he did a lot for this community, especially in a time when it was really exploding in population, and there was a lot on his table when he handed it off to Kathy. And I know he's going to be missed tremendously. There's a lot of people in town that knew him, loved him, and really respected him. So I wanted to share that. And I've heard the stories about the golf course too. He actually got ladders and chainsaws and ordered, I don't know if he was still mayor at the time, but ordered people to come over there because I think he plays the draw, and that was interfering with his draw.
Yeah.
So he had to get rid of a tree on a par 3.
There was a tree on the right, on 6, that was in the way. You couldn't get to the green.
But he did love the game of golf, and that was his passion. He spent his final days in Florida, but I know there's going to be services up here, and as soon as we find out those, I'll share them with everybody. So that's all I have this evening. I think we have a couple of department head reports. So, Chief.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. For the month of August, the fire department responded to 261 calls for service. That brings us up to 1,952 for the year, which is about 2% ahead of last year's pace. We completed 18 inspections and also worked on 3 different fire investigations during the course of the month. Fire prevention also worked on public education, totaling 21 hours and contacting 250 people in that time. We also completed 140 training sessions totaling 440 hours of work. The weather warning sirens all worked properly when they were tested on the 7th. Hydrant flushing is nearing an end. We're down to less than 100 to finish up. And probably for this year, Ashdale will not be tested because they're under construction and getting graded and seeded and all that stuff. So we'll push that off and catch up with it next year. Excuse me. Lieutenant's promotional exams coming up on September 19th with an assessment center for the top performers on the 26th. And we also added 2 part-time staff during the course of August, and we're continuing to vet and add additional staff as we can. And I also wanted to let you know on the 14th, this Saturday, we will be doing a live burn exercise at a structure on the Reuter-Stokes property. They have a residence back there that they used for a retreat center for a number of years, and it's fallen into disrepair and they're not using it anymore. So we will burn it down for them. So if you see smoke in that direction Saturday morning, that'll be the reason. And that's my report for today.
All right. Thanks, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
Tim, which building? Have Reuters?
The lot.
Down by the lake or all the way down the hill in Noah?
All the way in the back, yeah.
Okay.
All right.
That's a cool place.
All right. Sarah?
Good evening, council. The performance auditors are now in their data collection phase, so we're just waiting on their next information request and we'll get them whatever they ask for. Finance is completing our trainings this month. We're doing the Ohio Sunshine Law training, going to be at the GFOA annual conference, as well as our accounting software's annual conference. 2020 capital budget, as discussed, has been presented to the Capital Improvement Board, and we'll be working with them over the next couple weeks to put that through to Finance Committee. And then the August financials are being finalized this week. We'll have them up on the website as soon as they're available. That's it for me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next on the legislation, first is ordinance 82, 2019.
An ordinance amending the current year appropriations for the general revenue account as established in Ordinance 18, 2019, the appropriation ordinance for the City of Twinsburg for the year 2019, and declaring an emergency.
I'd like to make a motion to put ordinance 82, 2019 on its third and final reading and declare it an emergency. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Fury seconds.
The reason for the emergency is that we want to transfer the donations of $4,000 into the P&R fund, as well as the $47,000 or $42,000 we got from the NOPEC grant into the capital building fund to be used for the charging stations and the retrofitting of the tennis courts to pickleball.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay, Shannon, call the roll, please.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Now I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance 82, 2019 as an emergency. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Fury seconds.
Mr. Steele?
Yes, sir.
So we've had an awful lot of discussion about pickleball and tennis and pickleball, and so I'm not going to rehash all that. I just do want to say I will not be voting for this evening because in my mind, you cannot play tennis on a pickleball court, but you can play pickleball on a tennis court. I'm certainly not discounting the pickleball people. I'm sure that as soon as I get out there, I like you, will be as addicted as you are. But I just don't think this particular time is the right time to do it. Thank you, sir.
Okay. I find myself thinking, as Mr. Bellin does, about my days playing tennis and that you can't play tennis on a pickleball court. And I also look at and think that there's added expenses that we are going to get into, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent that these expenses exist or going to exist, like more parking. It's going to get expensive. My preference would be to step back, wait a bit, and really think through where we could put you guys on a your own pickleball courts, try and find a place. We're going to get 6 on these 2 tennis courts, correct? I think that's what it is. I'd like to see us put maybe 9 or 12 if we can figure out how to do it and someplace to put it. I realize that the part of the emergency is we got to get this done for you guys before, in the next couple of weeks, if you're going to get a chance to get on these courts and play before the weather breaks, okay? But I get back to all the extras that are attached to it, and I'm going to join Mr. Bellon and say no, but I know that there's 4 other people up here, I think, that are going to vote for you. So you're going to have your pickleball courts, folks. Anything else? Okay. Shannon, call the roll.
Mr. Steele?
No.
Mr. Fury?
Absolutely.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Bellon?
No.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 82, 2019 passes 4-2. You got your courts. Next is ordinance 83, 2019.
An ordinance establishing Chapter 771 of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Twinsburg regulating short-term rental property within the city.
Okay, that's on its first reading. Next is unfinished business, new business, and miscellaneous. Now, I do have something to say, okay? It's nice to see people coming to a council meeting, okay? I've said this several times. I wish you guys would come more often, not just because you're here for pickleball, but, you know, part of what we do here on council is, as you heard, there's some zoning issues that some people are taking us to task for. And I think the more residents that get involved in what's going on and come to our meetings, the better off our city is, okay? Whether we all agree, or we certainly won't agree on everything, okay? But I think we can have people come to our meetings and disagree, and we can still go out and be residents of the city of Twinsburg and keep our city moving forward, okay? Anything else?
I have one thing.
Go ahead.
18 years ago this evening,
Yeah.
3,000 people were spending their last night with their family. My wife and I were in Virginia. We were 5 miles from the Pentagon. So I just want to take a moment to remember those families. Nothing further. Let's roll.
Okay. Anything else? Okay.
Mr. Steele, I do have one.
Go ahead, Scott.
I have a motion, and this is basically just a motion to approve the extension request for a conditional use permit for the temporary classroom trailer New Adventures Daycare until 11/1/20, as approved by the Planning Commission unanimously at their meeting on 8/19. I know it was a couple of weeks ago when I did talk about the conditional use permit for their hopeful new facility. This is just would be council's approval of allowing them to keep their temporary classroom trailer until their new facility is up and running.
I'll
So
second.
I'd like to make that motion if there's a second.
Mr. Fury, seconds?
Wonderful. Is there any discussion? Ms. Collins, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Absolutely.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Bellon?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Thank you. That's all for me then, Mr. Steele.
Anything?
I do have a few things.
Sure.
One I wanted to mention, and I don't think we brought this up, but with the support of pickleball courts, the Friends of the Twinsburg Parks also supported this. And so I think that was part of my decision. We had a group that was supporting that as well. And although we say that you can't play pickleball or tennis on a pickleball court, I do think there is going to be an area for young families who can just go up there and play. And I agree, I'm sure Amanda mentioned that might teach some head skills, but I don't know that everybody who plays tennis is vying to be a real tennis player. People, it does have hopefully a market for people who just want to go up and hit the ball back and forth. So I did support it for those reasons, along with the fact that if those courts are being used right now by pickleball courts, they can't be used, pickleball players, they can't be used by tennis players. So we can get more people in there and service more people, which was really why I decided to support this. And then I would also like to offer my condolences to the Karabeck family. The reason I'm sitting here is because of Mayor Karabeck. 20 years ago, he got me involved in a few things, and he was also a family friend. So I'd like to extend my condolences to the entire family. And that's all I have.
Right. Okay. Thank you. I too would like to extend, I've been in contact with the Karabecks. I have been talking with some of them today via messaging through Facebook. And I also publicly would like to extend my condolences to them. I've known Jim Karabeck for quite a long time. Ever since I moved here, actually, he was the mayor at the time. And I just know him to be so diligent in everything that he does or everything that he did. And even till this day, he's been probably out of the mayor's office now, I believe, 20 years. But still cared. And he moved away. He's in Florida. But he still cares about Twinsburg, the Twinsburg that he helped build, and the Twinsburg that he loved. And any time an issue came up, my phone would ring, as I'm sure some of the others, it would be Jim Karabeck saying, hey, you know what, here's my opinion, you got to do the right thing. You know, and we were still getting advice from him. And I truly am going to miss that, hearing from him as we did. So I want to extend my condolences there. To add on to Mr. Bellin's comments about September 11th, 2001, Brian, I think it might be appropriate, if you would, can we have a moment of silence in remembrance of all those folks, and just a quick little prayer for them.
Before we do that, I would like to say something that I was working here on the police department that day, okay? And I was out on the road, heard on the radio that a plane had hit the Tower 1. I came back to the station and went into dispatch. They had the TV in there and saw the one tower burning, and then, next thing you know, the second tower gets hit. It was kind of shocking. I mean, but the first tower went down, then the second tower went down, and then one of the other officers that was working that day made a comment and said, we probably should go and sit around the schools. Might make everybody feel better. That officer was Josh McTerrian. We lost a lot of people in New York. We lost Josh. I don't know what else to say. Okay, so now the next on the agenda is we should excuse absent members.
Can we have a moment of silence, please?
Oh, please, moment of silence, yes.
Now a moment of silence. Wait for you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we need to excuse absent members. I'd like to make a motion, we excuse Ms. McFerrin tonight. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Fury seconds. Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Okay, Ms. McFerrin is excused. Next thing is is to adjourn, but last thing to say is we didn't follow everything by the letter of the law here at our meeting tonight. We let people talk out of order. Thank you to my fellow council members for letting those things happen. It was something we needed to do to hear everybody. I really think that that's important, that we get the community input into what we're doing. With that being said,
One
That's
second.
right.
Did the mayor have
You go.
something? And then-
yeah, oh, I'm sorry. Mayor, you're up.
No, that's fine. You could have concluded. Again, I think when we talk about 9/11, I think there's probably a moment in all of our lives that we remember exactly where we were. I think time kind of stood still. I was watching it upstairs in a small office through a TV that wasn't very good, but it's one of those things that has impacted our country for years and will continue to impact the way that our country operates in this world. So I don't remember all those families, and I know we'll never forget them. That's it. Thank you.
We're adjourned. Thanks for coming.